Hey guys, tonight we begin at the very beginning. The beginning of everything. Not just the gods or the heroes or the epic sea monsters, but the first breath of being itself. Picture it. No earth beneath your feet, no stars above your head, no time ticking forward. Only a vast, endless void. A dark silence without even silence to describe it. That, my friend, is chaos. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, I'd love to know. Drop a comment with your location and the local time right now. Let's see how far this mythic night stretches. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You float in that void now, weightless, timeless, surrounded by nothing but potential. Chaos isn't evil or loud or full of monsters. Not yet. It's more like a cosmic shrug. And then, like the flicker of a candle in pitch blackness, something stirs. From chaos comes Gaia, Mother Earth herself. She doesn't burst in with a flashbang or lightning crack. She just is. Solid. Ancient. You feel your toes press into her as she forms beneath you, green and rolling and strong. Alongside her emerges Tartarus, the deep abyss, her shadow twin. Where Gaia nurtures, Tartarus devours. Then comes Eros, not the cherub with arrows, but primordial desire itself. The eye, force that pulls things together, the glue of creation. Suddenly things don't just exist, they want. They want to bond, to build, to change. You glance upward and there's Nyx, the night cloaked in deep velvet, and Erebus, darkness personified, following close behind. These aren't villains or monsters. They're inevitabilities, eternal, ingredients of being. Historians still argue whether chaos was a being or just the first cosmic condition. But tonight, you're here to feel it. Gaia, alone but not idle, gives birth to Uranus, the sky. No, not with fireworks. He just stretches. Out above her, stars blinking into his skin. The two lovers, earth and sky, embrace, and from them spill the first true dynasty, the Titans. These aren't your sleek Olympian gods yet. The Titans are raw, elemental. Oceanus and Tethys, endless water. Hyperion and Theia, light and sight. Creus Iapetus Coeus. Their names sound like ancient drum beats, but one Titan stands out like a crackling storm on a sunny day. Kronos. You're watching Kronos grow. He's cunning, sharp-edged, and a bit of a control freak. Uranus, the Sky Father, becomes possessive. He buries his children deep in Gaia's belly, unwilling to let them rise. You feel her pain as she groans beneath their weight. And so she crafts a plan. With Gaia's help, Kronos fashions a sickle. Not metaphorical, not symbolic. You can almost feel its cool, jagged blade. One night, when Uranus descends to cover Gaia, Kronos leaps up and slices. The sky shatters. The stars scream. Uranus recoils, his blood dripping into the ocean. From that cosmic bloodbath, strange things are born. The Furies, avengers of family, bloodshed, shriek into existence. Giants thunder forth, and from the sea foam stirred by Uranus's severed flesh. Yes, that's Aphrodite, floating serene and impossibly radiant, already smirking at your shocked expression. But we'll come back to her later. Now Kronos rules. He frees his fellow Titans and claims the throne, but Gaia remembers. So does Uranus. Before vanishing, he curses Kronos. You will be overthrown by your own child. You raise an eyebrow. Classic. Kronos finds a wife, his sister Rhea. Greek myths are tight-knit like that. And soon they have children. But Kronos isn't taking any chances. The moment each baby is born, he swallows them whole. One gulp. No bib. Bye-bye, Hestia. Gulp. There goes Demeter. Slurp. Poseidon. Hades. Hera. All five vanish into his stomach like a weird god smoothie. But when baby number 6 is born, Rhea's had enough. She hides him on the island of Crete and hands Kronos a rock wrapped in cloth. He swallows it without looking. You almost feel bad for the guy. Almost. The baby grows up far from his cannibal dad's reach, nursed by a goat named Amalthea, and protected by Curates, warriors who clang their shields to cover his cries. You've heard of this baby. His name is Zeus. Meanwhile, under Kronos' rule, the world is stuck in cosmic repression. The Titans lounge, rule, and simmer. Zeus grows up fast, like myth kids tend to. One day, he returns in disguise, tricking Kronos into vomiting up his siblings. They emerge fully grown and probably very annoyed. Cue the Titanomachy, the war to end all family squabbles. Zeus and his siblings versus the Titans. You stand at the edge of Mount Olympus, thunder flashing, mountains shaking, monsters howling. The war lasts 10 years. Think World War I, but with flying serpents and lava cyclopes. Zeus gets backup. From Gaia's suggestion, he frees the 100-handed ones and the cyclopes from Tartarus. In gratitude, the Cyclopes forge thunderbolts for him. Poseidon gets a trident and Hades gets a helmet of invisibility. Best party favors ever. The battle rages until the Olympians win. Kronos is defeated and either chopped into bits or banished to the underworld. Depends on which version you ask. The Titans fall except for a few. Prometheus, Epimetheus, Oceanus, who either switch sides or keep their heads down. And now, you stand atop Olympus. The sky is quiet. Zeus has taken the throne. Hades rules the underworld. Poseidon governs the sea. It's the start of a new divine era, one with slightly better PR and way more scandals. But don't get too cozy up here. Things are about to get messy. Very, very messy. You're still standing on the cool marble heights of Mount Olympus, but you feel a prickling at your neck. Because even in this moment of triumph, something's brewing on the mortal plane. Something risky, rebellious, and very, very flammable. You look down and there's Prometheus, that tall, brooding titan who picked the winning side in the war. He's not lounging around like the other ex-titans, and he's definitely not admiring Zeus's new lightning tricks. No, Prometheus is busy with mud and water, sculpting something strange, something human. He molds the first mortals from clay, shaping arms, legs, a head, a heart. Not perfect, not divine, but full of potential. He presses his thumb into the chest and whispers breath into it. You watch as the mud stirs and the first humans blink open their eyes. Prometheus doesn't just stop there. He becomes their silent guardian. He teaches them how to build, how to count, how to listen to the stars. He's basically running the first ever TED Talk for survival. But the one thing they don't have? Fire. Zeus, up on Olympus, has drawn a hard line. Fire is for the gods. That's it. Mortals are meant to struggle, to depend, to worship. Fire gives independence, and independence makes the gods nervous. So Zeus says no. But Prometheus has always been a little allergic to authority. So one night, when the clouds blanket the sky, and the gods are off at a feast, he sneaks up to the heavens. He lights a fennel stalk, a humble hollow plant, off the eternal flame. And with that tiny glowing coal inside it, he descends to earth. You feel the moment it touches the ground. Fire bursts into being, and everything changes. The world lights up. Humans huddle around it, their eyes wide with wonder and warmth. They cook, they forge, they begin. You smile, and then you hear thunder. Zeus is not amused. He's less stern dad and more cosmic tyrant when he finds out. Prometheus is dragged away, not killed, no, that would be too quick. Instead, Zeus chains him to a rock in the Caucasus Mountains. There you climb beside him, shackles digging into flesh, and every day, an eagle swoops down and tears into his liver, and every night, the liver grows back. Welcome to Greek mythology's favorite punishment loop. Now here's the thing, historians still argue whether Prometheus represents the spirit of rebellion, the light of knowledge, or just the kind of guy who can't help poking the bear. But mythologically speaking, he's also kind of the first martyr for human potential. A fringe theory suggests that Prometheus wasn't just a titan, but a remnant of some older god, the kind humans loved before the Olympians got trendy. You can see why. He's not perfect, but he's the only god who truly seems to like us, or at least like us enough to suffer for us. Meanwhile, back on Olympus, Zeus isn't finished being petty. If Prometheus wants to love humans so much, fine. Let's see how much he loves them after Zeus gifts them a little surprise. Enter Pandora. She's sculpted from earth and water, like Prometheus's clay humans, but she's infused with every divine enhancement the gods can cram into a single body: beauty from Aphrodite, curiosity from Hermes, musical voice from Apollo. She's basically the myth version of a dangerously overpowered NPC. And then, just to make it worse, Zeus gives her a sealed jar. And the humans? Oh, they never stood a chance. But we'll open that jar in the next section. For now, you linger with Prometheus. The eagle circles above again. You wince as it descends. Yet Prometheus doesn't scream. He just gazes out at the horizon, watching, enduring, knowing he was right. You step carefully now. There's a jar sitting in front of you, a beautiful one, the kind that gleams even in the shadows, humming with secrets. You want to lift the lid. You really do. But first, let's meet the woman holding it. Pandora. She walks like sunlight on marble floors, elegant, radiant, and entirely unaware that she's a divine trap in a human dress, crafted by Hephaestus, sculpted to perfection, and gifted to mankind, as the gods' glittering apology, or so it seems. Really, she's a booby-trapped birthday present. See, Prometheus had a brother, Epimetheus, not the sharpest titan at the dinner table. His name literally means afterthought, which is about as flattering as naming your kid Oops. Prometheus had warned him, do not accept any gifts from Zeus. But then Pandora shows up at his door smiling sweetly, carrying a lovely lidded jar. Epimetheus takes one look at her and thinks, what's the worst that could happen? Classic last words. Now, the jar. Yes, jar, not box. That's a mistranslation that stuck like gum on the sandal of history. The gods didn't give Pandora an instruction manual, but they did pack the jar full of every misery imaginable. Disease, sorrow, death, greed, jealousy, taxes. Okay, maybe. Not taxes, but probably the urge to invent them. One day, driven by that gentle Hermes-installed curiosity, Pandora peeks inside. Just a little. You hear a hiss, like air escaping a balloon. Then, chaos. Every evil streaks out of the jar like shadowy smoke. It wraps around humanity, clinging to skin, sinking into bone. You shiver. Pain finds its way into the world. So does famine, and aging, and heartbreak. You see people hunched, and coughing, fighting, crying, and wondering what they did to deserve it. Pandora slams the lid shut, heart racing. Inside there's one thing left. It flutters at the bottom like a moth in a glass. Hope. Scholars still debate what that means. Was hope meant to be a comfort? Or is it just another cruel trick, a way to keep mortals struggling longer? A fringe school of thought even suggests the gods meant for hope to escape too, but Pandora's panic trapped it. You peer into the jar, and see it, a fragile flickering light stubborn as a candle in a storm. Meanwhile, humanity stumbles forward, now painfully aware of its vulnerability. But with that awareness comes resilience. Fire may have given them power, but suffering gives them soul. And far above, Zeus watches, not with wrath now, but with something colder, distance. He's made his point. Prometheus is shackled. Mortals are flawed. The jar is sealed. But this uneasy balance won't last. Because if you think this was the worst the gods had planned, just wait until it starts raining. For days, you blink up at the sky. It's quiet. Too quiet. A stillness that settles over the earth like a held breath. Clouds begin to gather. Not the fluffy drifting kind, but a wall of bruised gray coiling with menace. The gods are watching again. And this time, Zeus isn't sending down thunder for show. He's sending rain, and he's not planning to stop. Welcome to the Great Flood, Greek mythology's very own reboot centuries before Noah built his ark, though the similarities will have you raising an eyebrow. You're about to witness humanity's second wipeout, all because the gods thought their first draft got a little messy. See? The fire-gifted, jar-doomed humans? They didn't exactly flourish gracefully. Violence broke out. Greed, pride, impiety. Basically, all the traits that roll their eyes. At divine authority, Zeus starts to feel like his shiny new Earth project is less noble beings of clay and reason, and more ants throwing spears at the sun. So, after consulting with a few gods, and probably ignoring the ones who said, maybe just a warning, Zeus decides to flush the whole thing clean. Not with lava, not with lightning, with water. Endless, god-sized buckets of it. But not everyone's doomed. You spot Deucalion and Pyrrha. Noah adjacent, yes, but distinctly Greek. Deucalion is Prometheus's son, and unlike his tragically impulsive uncle Epimetheus, he's clever and good-hearted. Pyrrha, his wife, is the daughter of Pandora and Epimetheus. So yeah, the family holidays are weird. Prometheus, still chained but always one step ahead, gives his son a warning. Build a chest, basically a giant wooden box, and get inside it with Pyrrha. No sails, no rudder, no GPS. Just trust the current and your lineage. You float beside them now inside the chest as the rain falls like the sky is weeping through every pore. Mountains vanish. Cities disappear. Fields dissolve into soup. For 9 days and nights the world drowns and the gods watch in silence. Then, suddenly, silence again. But this time, it's hopeful. The chest grinds to a halt on Mount Parnassus, the water receding like a guest who overstayed their welcome. Deucalion and Pyrrha step out onto a washed, clean world. They're alive, but very alone. The world is empty, chilly, and quiet in a way that makes your teeth itch. So what now? They pray. Specifically to Themis, the ancient titaness of divine law. She doesn't offer a stork or some miraculous pregnancy story. Instead, she gives them a riddle. Cover your heads and throw the bones of your mother behind you. Squint. Cryptic. But Deucalion is Prometheus's kid, and Pyrrha's not slow either. They realize mother means Gaia, earth, and her bones, stones. So they cover their heads, pick up rocks, and throw them over their shoulders. Each stone thuds to the ground, and then shivers, stretches, and reshapes into a human being. The stones Deucalion throws become men. The ones Pyrrha throws become women. You watch as civilization rises again, slowly and sturdily, built from stone and memory. Historians still debate whether this flood myth was inspired by real events. A tsunami, a river overflow, maybe a Bronze Age deluge. But whether symbolic or literal, the Greek flood isn't about destruction. It's about resilience. It says, even when the gods throw their worst at you, you find a rock, you throw it behind you, and you keep going. Also, it's a quiet flex from Prometheus. Even chained to a mountain, he still manages to save the species. The rains may have stopped, but don't let your guard down just yet. The gods are reshuffling, the Olympians are getting comfortable on their cloud thrones, and you're about to meet them properly, not just as thunderbolt hurlers and jar sealers, but as a full-on celestial family with drama that makes reality TV look tame. You're back on solid ground now, dry, slightly muddy, and littered with river-polished stones that once held the memory of a flood. The world has restarted, repopulated by rocks thrown with faith and cleverness. But the real action? That's happening above you, where Mount Olympus is no longer just a poetic mountaintop. It's HQ for the new gods. The Olympians have claimed their seats. Let's take a breath here because this pantheon is not subtle. If you're imagining graceful beings in white robes calmly sipping nectar, adjust that mental image. The Olympians are dramatic, moody, and about as stable as a three-legged stool during an earthquake. But they're also wildly charismatic, and somehow, despite the divine chaos, they hold the world together. You wander through Olympus now. It glows with sunlight that never dims, with marble too perfect for mortal hands to have shaped. The air smells like lightning, roses, and the faint tension of unresolved family issues. Welcome to the most dysfunctional divine family you've ever met. At the head of it all sits Zeus, king of the gods, still polishing his thunderbolts, still dramatically pointing at clouds whenever someone misbehaves. We'll give him his own spotlight in a moment, but know this: everything revolves around him, whether the others like it or not. Next to him, sort of, is Hera, his wife and sister. Yes, both. It's a mythology thing. She's the goddess of marriage and childbirth, which is deeply ironic given how often Zeus tests her patience by exploring other romantic opportunities, as he'd probably call it. Hera, by the way, has a memory like an elephant and zero tolerance for being disrespected. Spoiler, that's going to matter a lot. Their siblings are heavy hitters too. Poseidon, god of the sea, temperamental and saltier than his oceans. Hades, god of the underworld, brooding and serious, currently doing his own thing in a much darker corner of existence. Hestia, goddess of the hearth, sweet, quiet, and wisely opting out of most arguments. Then come the second-generation Olympians, the children of Zeus and others. There's Athena, born fully armored from Zeus's forehead because he ate her mother. Again, myth logic. Apollo and Artemis, twin archers of the sun and moon. Ares, god of war, who's all biceps and zero subtlety. Hermes, the messenger, and mischief maker, basically the divine version of a very clever raccoon. Hephaestus, the forge god, brilliant, scarred, and always slightly soot-covered. And last but not least, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, who may or may not have emerged from seafoam after Uranus got an unexpected seafoam moment. You try to keep up, but it's like being dropped into a divine soap opera. Affairs, grudges, rivalries, alliances, it's all happening at once. Here's a mainstream fact to ground you. The earliest sources for this pantheon come from Hesiod's Theogony and Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, written around the 8th century BCE. But even these epic poets couldn't keep all the stories straight. Historians still argue whether Aphrodite predates the Olympians or was truly one of them. And some fringe theories suggest the gods were regional cult figures stitched into a single divine narrative for political unity. But for you, standing here, now it's all real. The gods bicker over ambrosia. Hermes is stealing sandals. Artemis is threatening anyone who even glances at her sacred deer. And Zeus? He's already eyeing his next mortal conquest. Because of course he is. Despite all, the Olympians hold dominion. They are the arbiters of fate, the guardians of cosmic order, and the reason ships sail or sink. They can be generous or vicious, but never boring. You get the sense that they're barely keeping it together, and somehow, that's what makes them relatable. These aren't abstract, distant deities. They're emotional, messy, deeply human in all the worst and best ways. And now that they're seated, thunderbolts charged, chariots polished, and stories ready to unfold, it's time to take a closer look. Starting with Zeus, the storm-wielding, rule-bending, occasionally bird-shaped king of the gods. You're standing at the edge of a storm. The sky crackles. Not the soft kind of thunder that rolls like a distant drum, but a snap so sudden it tightens your chest. That's him. Zeus, the king, the big boss, the ultimate cloud-based middle manager with trust issues and too many kids. He doesn't walk, so much as command the space around him to part. His eyes spark with lightning, and when he speaks, you don't just hear it. You feel it in your ribcage. He's not the oldest god nor the wisest, but he's the one who won the Game of Thrones. Literally. Rewind a little. After Kronos swallowed his kids like Sunday appetizers, Rhea pulled a fast one, hiding baby Zeus in a cave and feeding Kronos a swaddled rock. Parenting was different back then. Little Zeus was raised on goat milk from the divine nanny goat Amalthea. Some say he played with a magical ball that glowed in the dark. Others claim the cave echoed with future thunder. Eventually, Zeus grew up, rebelled, and forced Kronos to vomit up his siblings. Delicious imagery. The gods then waged war against the Titans, an all-out divine brawl known as the Titanomachy. Think Game of Thrones meets natural disasters. Zeus leads the Olympians. It lasts 10 years. There's lava. There's Mount Othrys getting pancaked. There's the Cyclopes crafting Zeus's iconic thunderbolts like very grumpy interns. Finally, the Titans are defeated and thrown into Tartarus, the cosmic basement of suffering. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades draw lots to divide the world. Zeus gets the sky, Poseidon the sea, and Hades the underworld. It's like three brothers getting keys to very different apartments. But Zeus isn't just the god of thunder. He's the god of law, order, oaths, and hospitality. If someone breaks a promise or mistreats a guest, Zeus sees it, and he remembers, even if he himself is wildly inconsistent about following the same rules. Classic boss energy. You glance at his personal life and, oh boy, the man has range. He shapeshifts more often than a Marvel villain. A bull, a swan, a golden shower. Not that kind, keep your toga on. Each form is a disguise to woo, or more often ambush, mortals and nymphs. Zeus's romantic exploits produce half the Greek heroes you've ever heard of. Some of them will get their spotlight later, but just know, if there's a strong jawline and tragic prophecy involved, there's a good chance Zeus is the baby daddy. One of the more fringe but juicy tidbits? Some versions claim Zeus once considered merging all humanity into a single perfect being, an idea quickly dropped after realizing mortals barely work as separate units. File that under godly existential experiments. But for all his chaos, mortals still build temples for him. They call him Zeus Xenios, protector of guests, Zeus Horkios, enforcer of oaths, Zeus Ombrios, bringer of rain. The gods fear his power, even when they roll their eyes at his whims. His decisions ripple through both Earth and Olympus. Historians still argue whether the many aspects of Zeus reflect regional cults blending into one identity. Was sky god Zeus really just a patchwork of storm deities? Or was he always intended as this all-encompassing, shape-shifting force of divine authority? No one agrees. But up here, among the clouds and marble halls, one thing is clear. Zeus is always watching, always planning, always just one lightning bolt away from smiting or seducing, depending on the mood. And right now, he's about to fall in love again, or at least become very interested in a woman standing on the shores of Phoenicia, whose fate will carry her all the way to a continent that ends up bearing her name. Better grab your sandals. You're going to meet Europa next. You feel the sea. Breeze first, warm and fragrant, laced with distant myrrh and salt. The shoreline of ancient Phoenicia glows in the afternoon sun, waves lapping lazily like they're in on a secret. And there, dancing in the sand with her companions, is Europa. Her laugh cuts through the air like wind chimes. She's not a goddess, not a queen yet, just a mortal princess with that special quality the gods always seem to notice. Maybe it's beauty. Maybe it's the aura of inevitable doom. With Olympus, it's often the same thing. You glance upward. Yep, Zeus is watching again. Now, you might think he'd swoop down as himself, announce his divine status, and propose something ridiculous and shiny. But no. Zeus's preferred method of courtship is creative. This time, he turns into a bull. A dazzling white bull, to be specific. Its hide gleams like polished ivory, eyes soft and oddly intelligent for livestock. Europa is entranced. She reaches out, strokes its neck, giggles at its gentleness. The bull lies down, inviting her to climb onto its back. Big mistake. The moment she does, the bull bolts. Not a gallop around the meadow, a full sprint into the sea. You sprint after them, but the water swallows their path, and suddenly, Europa is riding a divine bovine across the open ocean, her veil trailing behind her. Like a second wake, where is he taking her? To Crete. There, Zeus finally reveals his true form. Yes, that same here's a god surprise move he pulls in half his myths. And from their union comes Minos, future king of Crete, and a whole twisted bloodline that will eventually feature labyrinths, minotaurs, and a thread-bearing girl named Ariadne. Europa is honored, worshipped even. Her name is eventually given to an entire continent. But still, you wonder if she ever missed her beach, her dancing companions, the days before a bull changed her fate forever. Back on Olympus, Hera hears whispers, because of course she does. Her husband disappearing, a new star on the mortal. Grapevine, and yes, a suspicious number of cow-related metaphors. Hera's fury simmers, but we'll come back to that. Here's a quirky tidbit. In some versions, Zeus actually flies over the sea on wings while carrying Europa, bull disguise optional. Others say the bull is merely a dream, a symbolic seduction, rather than literal livestock theft. Mythology always has the director's cut and the theatrical version. Historically speaking, Europa's abduction may be a poetic retelling of the migration of ideas and cultures from the Near East to Greece. Phoenicia, representing the Old World, Crete the New. Historians still argue whether the myth reflects actual colonization patterns or is just another god's romantic escapade blown wildly out of proportion. But for now, you watch Europa dismount on Crete's shores, unaware of the legacy her name will carry. Her sons will found dynasties, her bloodline will tangle with legends. And somewhere in the sky, Zeus is probably already scouting his next scandal. Don't worry, you'll meet Hera soon. You climb, higher now, past clouds that smudge the horizon like smeared chalk. Up here, the air is thin and still, like the calm, before a particularly messy domestic argument. And waiting at the peak, where thunder quiets and marble softens, is Hera, queen of the gods, wife of Zeus, goddess of marriage, childbirth, and eternal grudges. You can almost hear her sigh. She sits not in submission, but with the slow, practiced patience of someone who's been through this too many times. You wouldn't blame her for flipping a table. Zeus's serial romantic projects would test the temper of a mountain. But Hera? She doesn't explode, she plans. And when she moves, Olympus notices. Let's rewind to how she got here. Hera was Kronos' daughter. So yes, Zeus's sister. And after he sliced up their dad and overthrew their mom-swallowing father, Zeus decided to marry her. He wooed her in various stories, sometimes by force, sometimes by charm, and once, hilariously, by pretending to be a freezing, helpless bird. Hera took pity on him, warmed the shivering thing in her robes, and boom, divine trap sprung. The marriage was rocky from day one. Zeus cheated, frequently. Hera, in turn, became queen of vengeance, but not toward her husband. Oh no. She focused, her wrath on the women involved and often their innocent children. It's, not a great look. You pass through the marble halls of Olympus and see her handiwork, the echoes of her wrath. Semele, who was tricked into asking to see Zeus in his true form and was vaporized for it. Leto, hunted across the earth while pregnant. Io, transformed into a cow and chased by a gadfly like a bovine fugitive. Hera's actions may seem harsh, but pause for a moment. She's the goddess of marriage in a world where divine fidelity is non-existent. Imagine being the figurehead for sacred unions when your own partner turns into animals to cheat on you. Historians still argue whether Hera's darker portrayals reflect real societal anxieties about powerful women in patriarchal cultures. Was her rage exaggerated to warn against female authority? Or was she originally a pre-Greek mother goddess reshaped to fit the Olympian mold? Either way, you feel her presence like a quiet storm. She is not warmth, but law. She upholds tradition with an iron grip and a dagger smile. And when mortals or immortals defy her, especially those tangled up with Zeus, they tend to regret it. But she's more than fury. Hera also blesses faithful wives. She watches over childbirth. She's one of the most worshipped deities in the Greek world, with sanctuaries as grand as Zeus's. The Heraion of Samos, massive. The Argive Heraion, legendary. And yet, in every myth, she's always chasing shadows, always punishing symptoms of a disease she can't cure. Her husband's divine wanderlust. You stand at the edge of her chamber now. She meets your gaze, calm, composed, but with eyes that flicker like coals. You feel her calculating, not cruel, just resolute. Hera doesn't need to scream. Her silence can wither empires. And as you step back down the golden stairs of Olympus, you can already hear hoofbeats in the distance. Soft, hesitant, a cow-shaped shadow moving through reeds, because Io's story is next. Now imagine this. You're standing in ancient Egypt, where Io's story has supposedly settled. The Nile rolls by, unbothered by the chaos of gods, and priests in crisp linen murmur prayers to animal-headed deities. And yet, somewhere among the lotus blossoms and sunlit temples, there's now a Greek-born myth, the cow woman who fled her tormentors and found peace under foreign stars. It's not subtle, this blending of worlds. Epiphus, the child born of Io and Zeus, is said to become a ruler in Egypt, king of Memphis no less. And suddenly, Greek myth and Egyptian history are tied together with a shaky but determined knot. This isn't just mythology, it's myth, as geopolitics, an ancient PR campaign to suggest, hey, we've always been connected. The Greeks had a habit of doing this. They'd encounter a foreign god, say, the Egyptian Amun-Ra, and squint a little before declaring, that's just Zeus in a funny hat. Cultural translation by way of cosmic ego. And yet these mashups are more than just colonial metaphors. They're signals. They tell us that even in the ancient world, people were crossing borders, borrowing stories and blending pantheons like travelers swapping coins at a market stall. Io's journey, then, isn't just personal. It's continental. Her hoofprints chart the path of mythic globalization, how gods migrate, how legends morph, and how pain can be recast as pilgrimage. But while Egypt grants her rest, the scars remain. The gadfly is gone, Argus is dead, and Zeus is probably off ruining someone else's life. But Io still carries the weight of what she endured. The myths don't dwell on this. They rush toward Epaphus and dynasties, toward temples and altars. But if you slow down, if you linger with Io in those quiet moments after the chaos, you'll see the shape of something rarely acknowledged in ancient stories. Recovery. You might even call it resilience. Because unlike most of Zeus's conquests, who vanish, die, or fade into mythic side notes, Io survives. She adapts. She becomes more than a cautionary tale or a divine fling. She becomes a bridge between cultures, a symbol of transformation, maybe even a quiet protest against the gods who played with lives like dice. And when you hear about the Ionian Sea, named for her passage, you might think it's just geography. But now you know better. That name isn't just a label, it's a record, a reminder that even in the sweep of ancient epics, someone remembered her run. Someone marked the world in her name. So next time you hear Io's story, don't just picture a cow with a sad backstory. Picture a woman who outran a god's punishment, survived divine politics, and carved her way into history, not as a victim, but as a survivor whose footsteps echoed louder than the thunderbolts that chased her. The we see is still, for now, but you feel it. You always feel it before he arrives. A deep pressure in your chest, like the weight of a coming wave. A tremor in the earth beneath your feet. A sudden, salty tang on your tongue, even if you're miles inland. That's Poseidon. And you're about to dive headfirst into his ocean-sized mood swings. He's not subtle, this one. Where Zeus thunders from above and Hades lurks in shadows, Poseidon prefers the grand entrance. Crashing surf, howling wind, sea foam thrown into the sky like confetti from a divine tantrum. His trident isn't just for decoration. It cracks the ground, lifts islands from the sea, and splits ships like kindling. But like most Olympians, Poseidon didn't start on top. Born of Cronus and Rhea, swallowed like his siblings and vomited back up in a rather unceremonious reunion, he joins Zeus and Hades in that three-way post-Titanomachy game of rock, paper, scissors that divides the universe. Zeus gets the sky. Hades, the underworld, and Poseidon, well, he draws the sea. Some historians argue whether this was by luck, strength, or a subtle jab at Poseidon's stormy temper. After all, the sea's beauty hides its violence. You ride with him now across crashing waves. Dolphins leap beside his chariot, and sea nymphs giggle nervously around him, always aware that their god is as unpredictable as a tide. One moment, Poseidon is generous, sending calm seas to sailors and gifting saltwater springs to cities. The next, he's flooding entire coastlines because someone forgot to say thank you. Take Athens, for instance. You're there when Poseidon, eager to become the city's patron, slams his trident into the Acropolis and summons a salty spring. Not bad, right? Except Athena, calm and calculating, plants the first olive tree, a symbol of peace, prosperity, and actual usefulness. The people choose her. Poseidon, unsurprisingly, does not take rejection well, floods the land, ruins some crops. Classic bad loser energy. And yet, despite his temper, he's not all wrath and waves. Poseidon builds. He creates. He fathers. Oh, so many children. Horses, yes, horses. Cyclopes, sea monsters, heroes, and horrors. You can't throw a trident in Greek myth without hitting one of his descendants. Most famous? Probably the winged. Horse Pegasus, who springs from Medusa's neck after Perseus lops off her head. Mythology's logic is like that. Fluid, like the sea itself. But here's something most don't tell you. Poseidon's truest domain isn't just the ocean. It's instability. He rules earthquakes too. When the earth shakes under your feet, and buildings crumble, that's not Hades growling or Zeus striking. It's Poseidon stirring below. His Greek epithet enosagaios literally means earth shaker. So next time someone tries to tell you earthquakes come from tectonic plates, maybe gently suggest they apologize to Poseidon instead. And if you're wondering about Atlantis, yes, that Atlantis, well, guess who's involved? Some legends credit Poseidon as the island's original ruler, carving it from the sea for a mortal lover named Cleito. 10 children, a perfect city, advanced tech, gorgeous temples, ethical standards, until hubris gets the better of them. Atlantis sinks. Not necessarily out of spite, though let's be honest, that's always on the table with Poseidon. What makes Poseidon fascinating, and honestly exhausting, is that you never know what version you're going to get. Is he the protective god who watches over sailors, guiding Odysseus home through monstrous detours and inconvenient detours? Or is he the spiteful uncle who wrecks your fleet because you forgot to say a prayer? Historians still debate whether Poseidon reflects ancient Greek respect for the sea, or just their sheer terror of it. Quirky side note, he was once in love with a beautiful maiden named Caeneus. After a tryst, Caeneus asked to be transformed into an invulnerable man. Poseidon obliged, and boom, Caeneus became a hero, nearly impossible to kill, and eventually pounded into the earth with logs by centaurs in a very niche battle. Greek mythology doesn't do boring endings. You glance, now over Poseidon's realm, the endless sea. It's beautiful, yes, hypnotic, but you don't trust it. You shouldn't. Beneath the gentle shimmer lies leviathans, tempests, and divine grudges, older than the stars. To survive in Poseidon's world, you don't resist the current. You adapt to it. And as the god hurls another wave toward the shore, laughing with the joy only a moody immortal can muster, you realize something. He's not just the sea. He is the chaos of nature, the raw pulse of power that humans try and fail to contain. So maybe offer a little thanks next time the waters stay calm, because Poseidon may not always be watching, but when he is, you'd best hope he's in a good boot. The air shifts. It thickens, not with salt this time, but something colder, quieter. You're not near the sea anymore. The wind has stilled. Birds fall silent. Even your thoughts seem to echo as if bouncing off unseen stone walls. You've descended. Welcome to the underworld. This isn't the fiery inferno you might expect. That's a later invention, courtesy of Dante and friends. No, the Greek underworld is a landscape of shadows, rivers, silence. It stretches wide, not down, vast and murky, where souls drift like smoke and judgment is just another line to stand in. And at the center, sitting still as stone, is Hades. No thunder, no crashing waves, just a stillness so deep it hums. He's not what you expect. No horns, no tail, no pitchfork. In fact, he's strangely regal, robed in black, his eyes tired but sharp, like someone who sees everything and judges nothing. He's not evil. He's not even cruel. He's just inevitable. Hades didn't choose the underworld. He drew it. After the Titanomachy, when Zeus claimed the sky and Poseidon took the sea, Hades got the short straw, or so it seemed. Because, while mortals fear death, death never runs out of customers. Real estate in the afterlife, booming business. You follow him now through his realm. Past the river Styx where Charon ferries souls across in a boat that never leaks but always creaks. Past Cerberus, the three-headed dog whose heads argue among themselves. Past the Elysian fields, where the blessed dead lounge in eternal sunset, and Tartarus where the damned wish they could forget. But Hades isn't just Lord of the Dead. He's the god of wealth too. Platon in Greek. Because where do you think gold and gems come from? From deep beneath the earth. Every mine whispers his name. Every buried treasure carries his signature. The living may fear him, but they still dig into his realm, hoping to strike it rich. And then there's Persephone. Ah, her. You're there when it happens. Hades, usually silent and distant, sees her in a meadow. A flash of something he doesn't recognize. Want, longing, loneliness. The ground splits. He takes her. Not with malice, but with certainty. As if some part of him believes it's the only way. The story is often told as abduction. And yes, on the surface it is, but like everything in Greek myth, it's more complicated. Persephone adapts. She doesn't scream forever. She negotiates. Becomes queen. Not a passive consort, but a powerful figure with her own throne, her own authority. When she speaks, even shades go quiet. Her mother, Demeter, weeps and wails and curses the earth into winter. And so, a compromise. Persephone spends half the year above, half below. Thus, the seasons are born. But more importantly, so is a truth. Even gods must yield to balance. You glance sideways at Hades now. He doesn't smile, but there's a weight to his presence. A gravity. Unlike Zeus, who demands attention, or Poseidon, who floods the room with it, Hades draws it. Slowly. Inescapably. And here's the thing. He might be the most just of them. All judgment in the underworld isn't arbitrary. Souls are weighed, deeds remembered. Great sinners don't get flames. They get irony. Sisyphus, rolling his rock. Tantalus, always thirsty. Ixion, spinning forever. It's less punishment, more cosmic poetry. Hades doesn't torture. He lets you live with yourself. Forever. But don't mistake his stillness for softness. Cross him and he won't rage like Poseidon. He'll simply ensure you vanish. Forgotten, erased, unmourned. He knows the most terrifying thing isn't pain. It's oblivion. And yet of all the Olympians, he's the one who understands humans best. Because he sees them without masks. No armor, no ambition, no ego, just souls, stripped bare, honest. You begin to leave, retracing your steps, but something lingers. A chill that isn't cold. A presence that isn't watching, but simply there. The underworld doesn't release you quickly. It stays with you the way a dream does. The kind you try to explain but can never quite describe. Hades returns to his throne. No farewell. No speech. Just a glance. You don't know if it's approval or warning, but you know this. He'll be there at the end. Silent. Unmoving. Waiting. And that's enough to make anyone live a little more carefully. You emerge from the underworld changed. Not older, not wiser, just quieter. There's something about brushing against finality that humbles you. The gods above might burn bright, but Hades showed you what it means to endure. You climb now toward light, back into the realm of breath and color and noise. And when you reach it, when the wind returns and the leaves rustle and the sky stretches endlessly above, you remember, there's one Olympian you haven't seen yet. She doesn't hurl lightning. She doesn't sink ships. She doesn't rule the skies or seas or the lands beneath. And yet, she's everywhere. Hestia, you don't find her on a mountaintop or in a temple. She's not throwing banquets or starting wars. She isn't even waiting for you. In fact, it's almost like she doesn't want to be found at all. But you feel her the moment you step into a home. Not a palace, just a home. Any home. The scent of bread baking, the sound of quiet laughter, the warmth of firelight flickering across familiar faces. That's where she is. That's where she's always been. Hestia is the goddess of the hearth, the center, the first fire lit in every newborn house, and the last one extinguished when a home is abandoned. She doesn't chase power or recognition. She is the foundation that allows all the others to exist. When the Olympians squabble, Hestia stays seated. When they fight, she keeps the fire burning. When Zeus rises, when Poseidon rages, when Hades withdraws, Hestia remains steady, constant, untouched by glory, but never without purpose. You remember that when the gods took their thrones, she was the first to be offered one. And when Dionysus rose, wild and new and loud, she was the one who stepped aside, voluntarily. No battles, no grudges, just a quiet bow and a retreat to the hearth where she's remained ever since. It's not weakness, it's strength of a different kind, the kind that doesn't shout to be seen, the kind that doesn't need worship to matter. And in a world of storms and shifting allegiances, that's rare. You watch her now, though she never turns. She doesn't need to. She knows you're there, the way fire knows when a room has grown cold. She adds a log. The flames rise. You sit, you breathe. No tests, no monsters, just presence. And in that stillness, you realize something. The hearth was the center of every Greek home, not by accident, but by necessity. It was where the day began, where sacrifices were made, where the family gathered. Hestia wasn't just a goddess, she was the anchor, the reminder that amidst all the chaos there must be a place of peace. No myths swirl around her, no grand epics. She doesn't transform or seduce or destroy. She simply is. And in a pantheon filled with drama, that makes her the rarest god of all, the one who asks for nothing. You rise slowly. Thank her, though she says nothing. The hearth crackles. The silence wraps around you, not empty, but full of what matters. And as you step outside, as the wind greets you again and the world continues to whirl and spin and burn, you carry her with you, because in the end, even gods need a place to come home to. You walk again, not as a hero, not as a seeker, just as someone who's seen the gods and lived to tell about it, and maybe that's enough. But there's one final presence you feel in the air, one last whisper through the trees, one last name that hums in the silence when all others have gone quiet. Nyx. She doesn't dwell on Olympus. She doesn't care for thrones or titles. She was born before them all, before Zeus, before Cronus, even before Gaia. She is the night itself, and she doesn't come when you call. Nyx arrives when the world exhales, when the light fades and the shadows lengthen, when sleep creeps in and dreams begin to slip their roots into waking minds. She is not darkness. She is the shape within it. You don't find her. She finds you. She steps from the horizon like a wave of dusk, skin darker than shadow, stars pinned in her hair. She says nothing, but her presence is complete, immediate. You feel the weight of everything you've forgotten, every whisper you didn't catch, every truth that never needed to be spoken aloud. And still, she is not cruel. She simply is, like gravity, like time, like silence. The gods fear her, not because she's violent, but because they don't understand her. Even Zeus, king of the sky, once approached her with caution, not out of reverence but survival. He knew, you don't challenge the night. You don't try to contain it, because Nyx is not the absence of light. She is the mother of it. Her children are sleep, death, dreams, madness, fate. Not monsters, not villains, just inevitabilities, pieces of life wrapped in darkness. You try to speak. You don't know why. Maybe to thank her. Maybe to ask her something about the nature of beginnings, or endings, or what waits behind the stars. But she doesn't answer. She only watches. And in that gaze, you understand what no myth ever quite says out loud. The night is not your enemy. It is your mirror. It shows you what you are without the distractions. without the spotlight, without the noise. It shows you the truth, and the truth is simple. The gods are not here to be envied or feared or even worshipped. They are reflections, exaggerations, of the best and worst in us. They love too hard, fall too far, fight too long. They build and break and rebuild over and over, just like you. And maybe, just maybe, they were never meant to be above you. Maybe they were always beside you. As you turn to leave Nyx, the world holds its breath. The stars pulse. The silence deepens, and, for a moment, a blink, a breath, you wonder if she's smiling. Not at you, with you. Because the journey is over now. You've met the storm and the sea, the sky and the underworld, the wild and the hearth, the darkness and the dawn. You've walked with gods, and what did they teach you? Not how to be divine, but how to be human. You walk away, not lighter, but fuller, and the night follows, not behind you, but within, always. You feel the forest breathe around you. The moon is high and cool, casting silver lace through the leaves. As you tread silently across the soft undergrowth, you're not alone. Not really. Something moves ahead, light-footed and sure. The air is thick with pine and the sharp, fresh scent of night flowers. A stag bolts in the distance. You hear it before you see it, and for a second, you think maybe you've startled it. But no, she's here, bow drawn, arrow loosed, clean, shot. This is Artemis's realm. Born on the remote island of Delos, twin sister to Apollo, Artemis arrives not with radiant light but with a solemn hush, a wildness that won't be tamed. She takes her first breath beneath swaying palms, midwife to her brother's more dramatic birth just minutes later. But unlike Apollo, sun-charming and golden, she asks for something quite different from her father Zeus. No marriage, no love, just wilderness, weapons, and eternal youth. You remember Leto, her mother, fleeing the wrath of Hera, ducking through lands that refused her shelter. When Artemis is born, it's as though nature itself whispers allegiance. She is not made for palaces or politics. She wants the hunt, the freedom of forests, the solitude of high mountain passes. Zeus, perhaps flustered or simply amused, grants her what she wants. A silver bow, a band of nymphs for companions, eternal virginity, and dominion over all wild creatures. You keep pace now as she weaves through silver birches, flanked by her loyal followers, young maidens untouched by man or time. They laugh softly, never too loud, never lingering. They leave no footprints. You feel clumsy just being here, like your sneakers are made of thunder. One of the great paradoxes of Artemis is her gentleness and her ferocity. She is protector of animals, goddess of childbirth and young girls. And yet, she's a killer, a precise, deliberate killer. When someone breaks her vows or dares disrespect her purity, the results are, let's say, unambiguous. Take Actaeon. Poor guy. Out hunting with his dogs, he stumbles across Artemis bathing in a secluded spring. One accidental glimpse. That's it. You almost want to shout at him to backpedal and apologize. But he's seen too much. With one cold glance, Artemis turns him into a stag. His own dogs don't recognize him. They tear him apart. That's not just divine justice, it's a message. And then there's Orion. Ah, Orion, the tall, strong hunter who actually impresses Artemis. They hunt together, laugh together. There are stories that suggest love blossoms, though not all agree. Historians still argue whether Artemis loved him romantically or saw him as a platonic kindred spirit. Either way, the end is tragic. Some say her twin, Apollo, tricks her into killing Orion by floating his distant silhouette in the sea and daring her to hit it. Others claim Gaia sends a scorpion to sting Orion after he threatens to hunt every beast on Earth. Regardless of version, the outcome's the same. Orion dies. Artemis mourns. She places him in the stars. You look up, and there he is. Orion, eternal constellation, forever pursued by a tiny scorpion trailing behind. There's something in Artemis that modern eyes often recognize. She doesn't conform. She lives by her own rules. She demands respect but never asks for pity. She's a goddess for the wild child, the loner, the one who prefers wolves to crowds and finds beauty in stillness. And yet, she's also deeply woven into the rhythm of life itself. In cities across Greece, expectant mothers pray to her for a safe delivery, which might feel a little odd, considering the whole eternal virgin forest assassin thing. But Artemis, paradox again, is both the bringer of new life and the one who guards its exit. She watches over transitions, girlhood into womanhood, life into death, light into dark. You wander further into the woods and notice shrines, little ones tucked beneath trees, offerings of honey cakes, carved figurines, small animal bones. People didn't just worship Artemis in temples. They came here, to the sacred groves, places where the trees feel older than the gods and the wind never quite loses its voice. One particularly quirky cult dedicated to her existed in Broron near Athens. There, young girls, some barely old enough to speak, would play the bear. Yes, literally. They dressed in saffron robes and mimicked bear behavior to honor the myth where Artemis demands restitution after a bear she loved was killed. It's strange and oddly touching, a reflection of how deeply personal this goddess became to those who followed her. But be warned, Artemis doesn't forgive easily. Just ask Agamemnon. Before sailing to Troy, he makes the fatal error of boasting about his hunting skills and accidentally kills a deer sacred to her. She demands the ultimate payment, his daughter Iphigenia. There's debate here too. Some say Artemis rescues the girl at the last second swapping in a deer. Others insist the sacrifice went through. Either way, the point is made. Artemis does not tolerate arrogance, and perhaps that's her secret strength. In a pantheon full of messy relationships, power games, and questionable parenting choices, Artemis stands apart, uncompromised. She doesn't chase anyone. She doesn't scheme or seduce. She simply is, unchanging, moonlit, dangerous, divine. As you step out of the woods, back into your own world, you feel like you've been let in on something sacred. Not soft, exactly, but sharp. A quiet kind of power. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. The kind that doesn't need to shout. The kind that disappears into the trees before you remember to say thank you. You exit the forest, but her presence lingers. Back in the sunlight, your mind replays the hush of Artemis's world. The quiet certainty, the fierce stillness. You feel changed somehow, like the air has rearranged around you. Some myths slip away after you hear them. Others dig in. Artemis is the second kind. You start to notice things you didn't before. The rhythm of your own breathing. The way shadows stretch across pavement like they're reaching for roots. Artemis is the part of divinity that doesn't need temples, because she's already in every tree, every ridge, every spine-straightening breath of cold morning air. And her independence? It's not just a character trait, it's a declaration. In a world where most goddesses were defined by who they married or mothered, Artemis carved out a third path. She chose to orbit outside the traditional roles, wielding power not through seduction or diplomacy, but through presence. Her refusal to be touched or owned becomes a radical act, a reclamation of self, especially in ancient Greece, where women's bodies were so often treated like property or dowry. And that legacy has carried forward subtly but undeniably. You can see Artemis's fingerprints in stories of defiant heroines, in the archetype of the warrior maiden, in girls who say no and mean it. She is echoed in Katniss Everdeen with her bow, in Princess Mononoke snarling alongside wolves, in every kid who climbs trees barefoot and won't come down for dinner. Yet there's a softness too, if you know where to look. Artemis wasn't cruel. She was clear. Her vengeance was not chaotic but precise, a sharp rebuke to those who crossed lines clearly drawn. She protected what mattered to her, her followers, her animals, her principles. Even her moonlit solitude was a kind of stewardship. And while she refused to love romantically, she loved in other ways, deeply and loyally. Her story, like the best myths, makes space for contradiction. She's a huntress who defends the hunted, a virgin who presides over childbirth, a solitary figure at the heart of many communities. Artemis contains multitudes and makes you wonder why we ever expected gods, or anyone, to be simple. You close your eyes for a moment. Imagine walking back into that forest, not as a guest this time, but as part of it. Maybe you'd move a little quieter, listen more, ask less, and maybe, if you're lucky, you'd hear a distant laugh from the trees, brief and bright and unafraid. The hunt never ends. The wild never sleeps. Artemis is watching. Waves crash, and the scent of salt stings your nostrils. You blink against sunlight reflected on endless blue. Standing now at the edge of the Aegean Sea, the foam churns around your ankles as Poseidon stirs beneath the depths, restless and regal, wielding storms like a temper tantrum with tidal consequences. This isn't the peaceful seashore of postcard dreams. It's moody, mercurial, alive. And when you speak of gods, Poseidon never just rules the sea. He is the sea. Immense, unpredictable, sometimes breathtaking, sometimes cruel. You feel it instantly. The weight of him. His chariot rumbles. Across the ocean floor, pulled by hippocamps. Half horse, half fish, all attitude. When Poseidon's angry, coastlines crack, earthquakes rumble, and sailors bargain with gods they don't even believe in. And he is often angry. Middle child of the big three, Poseidon got the ocean when Zeus took the sky, and Hades drew the underworld. Not a bad deal considering how much real estate is underwater, but Poseidon never quite lost the chip on his barnacled shoulder. You sense the bitterness of someone constantly overlooked at the family reunion. Still, he makes his presence known. You pass a crumbling temple, waves lapping at marble columns. Centuries ago, sailors once brought offerings here. Wine, bulls, and the occasional questionable goat, to appease the ocean's temper. Now, just seabirds and wind remain. But Poseidon doesn't need worship. He demands respect. And let's talk tridents. His weapon of choice isn't subtle. With one strike, Poseidon can split mountains, create springs, or reduce your beach vacation to a soggy mythological disaster. Legend says he struck the Acropolis during his contest with Athena, offering a salt spring to win the city. Athena, practical and clever, countered with an olive tree, and won. Poseidon sulked and never really got over it. Historians still argue whether this story masked political tensions between Athens' naval pride and agricultural identity. But symbolically, it's perfect. Poseidon offers force. Athena offers growth. You sigh. It's always the olive oil that wins. Still, Poseidon is no one-note brute. He's also the god of horses. Because why not? The Greeks believed he created the first horse, either out of sea foam or just divine creativity. There's something poetic about this. Wild steeds born from waves, all muscle and chaos, tethered just barely by human hands. And of course, like many gods, Poseidon had a love, life that could be kindly described as excessive. He pursued mortal women, nymphs, and even tried his luck with Medusa, before she became, well, her. One fringe tale says she was a priestess of Athena whom Poseidon seduced, or worse, in a sacred temple. Athena, furious at the desecration, transformed Medusa into a monster. Not exactly a highlight in divine ethics. It leaves a question bobbing in the tide. Was Poseidon a protector of oceans, or just another ego crashing against the shore? His sons, if you can keep track, often inherited his stormy nature. Polyphemus, the Cyclops from the Odyssey, is perhaps his most famous offspring. When Odysseus blinds him, in what some might call justified self-defense, Poseidon's revenge defines the next decade of the hero's life. You almost feel sorry for Odysseus. Almost. Poseidon is not a god you cross lightly, and yet, oddly, you start to admire him. Not for his tantrums, but for his truth. He doesn't pretend to be moral or merciful. He doesn't offer riddles or prophecies. Poseidon is raw power, movement, pressure. He is the ocean. And like the sea, he cannot be controlled, only endured, negotiated with, or occasionally outrun. A fun tidbit: ancient sailors would sometimes toss coins, or even entire animals, into the sea for a safe voyage. It's the mythological version of bribing TSA with a goat. You smile at the image of a creaky ship sailing out under moonlight, crew whispering desperate prayers over the side, hoping their offering doesn't float back. You look now across the waves, the wind sharp on your face. Poseidon's kingdom has no walls, no thrones, just the endless shifting surface of blue. You realize he's not down there brooding in a palace. No, he is the water wrapping around your calves, tugging at you like a reminder. You are small. You've always been small. Poseidon does not care who you are. He cares how well you can swim when the storm comes. And you feel it now, an urge to step back from the edge, to respect the sea not just as nature, but as deity. The ocean gives, the ocean takes. And Poseidon, he just shrugs. The next breath you take tastes like smoke. You're in a forge, not metaphorically, but literally. The air is thick, metallic, and blisteringly hot. Sparks dance like fireflies gone rogue, and everything glows in hues of orange and red. Beneath the roar of bellows and hammers, there's a steady rhythm, like a heartbeat made of iron. This is Hephaestus's realm. If Olympus had a maintenance department, Hephaestus would be the entire staff. management, and union. God of fire, forge, and craftsmanship. He's the divine blacksmith who makes the weapons the others throw around like party favors. Without him, Zeus has no lightning bolts. Athena has no armor. Even Aphrodite gets jewelry and a regrettable marriage contract. But Hephaestus? He gets heat, metal, and solitude. You can feel the injustice glowing off the anvil. He wasn't born perfect, not by Olympian standards. Some say Hera cast him from Olympus because of a twisted foot. Others say it was Zeus, after Hephaestus took Hera's side in a marital spat. Either way, the result was the same. A god flung from the heavens, crashing down like divine debris. He landed in the sea, raised by sea nymphs, crafted wonders from shipwrecks and coral until he earned his way back to Olympus, not through conquest or charm, but through relentless creation. Let's take a moment to appreciate the irony. The only Olympian who works for a living is the one they treated like scrap metal. But Hephaestus plays the long game. His return wasn't a triumphant march, it was a trap. He crafted a golden throne for Hera, sleek and elegant, and sent it to Olympus as a gift. The moment she sat in it, the chair locked her in place like a vice. Petty? Maybe. Genius? Absolutely, no one could free her. Not even Ares or Hermes. They had to beg Hephaestus to return. He made them grovel. He made them wait. Eventually, Dionysus got him drunk enough to come back, and the gods lifted their blacksmith from exile. Hera was freed. Hephaestus was reinstated, and somewhere deep inside the forge of his chest, the fire stayed lit. He never forgot. You walk deeper into the workshop. Everywhere there's movement. Mechanical birds perched on rafters, bronze automatons stirring vats of molten ore, tools that adjust themselves to fit the user's hand. This is divine engineering. Tesla meets Prometheus with a dash of Da Vinci. Hephaestus doesn't deal in symbols. He deals in substance. He makes things that do. Need a net that can trap gods? Hephaestus built it. He famously used it to catch Aphrodite and Ares mid-affair because even immortals have messy breakups. Need golden armor that shines like the sun? He forged it for Achilles, knowing full well it would outlive the man who wore it. And the irony? Hephaestus was married to Aphrodite, goddess of beauty and passion in what might be the most mismatched divine couple since time began. Was it a reward? A punishment? A cosmic joke? No one really knows. But the marriage was a mess. She loved Ares, the war god with a six-pack, and the emotional maturity of a sea sponge. Hephaestus, meanwhile, just kept hammering. He loved what he could make. The rest? He welded it shut. You run a hand over a nearby workbench, feeling the weight of creation. Unlike the other gods, Hephaestus doesn't shape minds or hearts. He shapes matter. He makes the ideas of Olympus real. And when something breaks, he's the one they call. There's something undeniably human about him. Maybe because he's imperfect. Maybe because he was rejected. Maybe because he built his identity not from birthright, but from labor, grit, and sweat. Hephaestus is the god of those who work with their hands. The artists, the engineers, the outcasts who learn to speak with metal because people stopped listening to their voices. He never had a throne made of gold. He made one. He never had glory handed to him. He welded it piece by piece, and while the other gods flit about with lightning bolts and divine tantrums, Hephaestus keeps working, building the very tools they'll use to destroy or defend the world. You pause. There's a respect here that doesn't demand attention because it doesn't need it. Hephaestus knows what he's worth even if no one else does. His story isn't about glory or beauty or war. It's about persistence. In a pantheon of egos, Hephaestus is proof that resilience is divinity. So when you leave his forge, sweat-soaked and blinking from the glare, you carry something heavier than a weapon. You carry an understanding that strength isn't always loud, and heroes aren't always beautiful. Sometimes they're limping, sometimes they're burned, sometimes they're quiet, but they're still standing, still creating, still divine. You wake in velvet dark, a breeze brushing across your skin like whispered secrets. The air smells like myrrh, roses, and something just on the edge of danger. Around you a palace glows, moonlight on marble, perfumed torches flickering, and there she stands, Psyche, mortal, beautiful beyond reason, a woman whose face could rattle Olympus and whose love story you're about to walk straight into blindfolded. Psyche doesn't ask to be beautiful. In fact, it's a curse. People abandon Aphrodite's temples to worship Psyche instead, calling her the new goddess of love. And if you know Aphrodite, you know this will not go unpunished. So she sends her son Eros, Cupid if you're Roman, to shoot Psyche with an arrow of divine sabotage. The goal? Make her fall in love with something hideous, like a slime mold, or a tax auditor. But here's the problem. Eros takes one look at Psyche and drops his own bow. Historians still argue whether this moment was love at first sight or a divine misfire, but either way, he pricks himself. Now he's the one obsessed. Classic. Meanwhile, poor Psyche can't find a husband. The oracle declares she must be sacrificed to a monster, so you walk beside her, dressed in bridal robes, trembling on a mountaintop as she's left for dead. But the wind, Zephyrus, sweeps her up gently. You float with her to a lush secret palace where invisible servants feed her grapes, bathe her in lavender, and serenade her with harp music that somehow doesn't feel corny. Each night a man comes to her. She never sees his face. He warns, "Don't look. Love me in darkness. Trust me in blindness." And Psyche does, at first. But back in her village, jealous sisters stir the pot. "What if he's a monster?" they ask. "What if he's fat?" they whisper. "What if he's actually your cousin?" Eventually, Psyche can't take the mystery. One night, you hold the oil lamp as she leans over her sleeping lover, light trembling in her hands. He's no monster. He's Eros himself, the god of love, wings folded, perfect. And then, drip. A single drop of oil hits his shoulder. He wakes, betrayed. Wings beat once and he's gone. You feel her heart break like a snapped string. Psyche's once paradise collapses into empty air. Now the real trials begin. Determined to win him back, Psyche throws herself at Aphrodite's feet. Big mistake. The goddess is feeling extremely petty. She sends Psyche on 4 impossible tasks. Heroes. Journey-level stuff without the courtesy of a sword. Task 1. Sort a mountain of mixed grains, barley, millet, lentils. Aphrodite expects failure, but you watch ants scurry in, thousands of tiny helpers, completing the task by sunset. Task 2. Steal golden wool from killer sheep. Psyche waits until dusk when they nap in the shade, then gathers stray tufts caught on thorns. Clever. Task 3. Fetch water from the Styx. You climb cliffs beside her, where the stream plunges from an impossible height. An eagle, maybe Zeus in disguise, maybe just a generous bird, snatches her flask and fills it. Tick. The final task? Journey to the underworld and bring back a box of Persephone's beauty. No pressure. She descends. You hold your breath through ghost-filled caverns and bridges of bone. In Hades' shadowy court, Persephone hands over the box with a warning. Don't open it. Naturally, on the way back, Psyche gets curious. Maybe if she uses just a little, she'll be radiant enough to win Eros again. She opens the box and falls into death-like sleep. Now, here's the quirky part. Some later versions suggest the box held, not beauty, but death, a kind of divine melatonin. Others imply it was a test of ego all along. What's clear is that Psyche collapses, and this time it's Eros who comes running. He finds her. He weeps. He kisses her. Love resurrects her. Together they fly to Olympus. Even Aphrodite relents grudgingly. Psyche drinks ambrosia and becomes a goddess. You stand at their wedding where even Zeus chuckles, Hera rolls her eyes, and the muses sing. Love and soul, Eros and Psyche, united forever. Their daughter, Hedone, the goddess of pleasure. As you step back from the celebration, you realize something. Greek myths rarely reward pure love, but this one does. Barely. After trials, after trust shattered and rebuilt, after descent and rebirth, this one ends in elevation. It's a tale that still whispers through psychology textbooks, oil paintings, and star-crossed lovers who believe they might make it, if only they don't peak too soon. There's a reason we keep returning to Psyche and Eros. Not just because it's one of the few myths with a happy ending, though that helps, but because it's the first love story in the Western canon where the woman is the hero, not a prize, not a pawn, a protagonist. Psyche doesn't wait to be rescued. She marches straight into hell for love and makes it back alive. That's rare. That's radical. Even her name means soul, the human soul in all its stubborn, hungry, wounded glory. And Eros? He's not. Just a god of desire, but of chaos and risk. The two aren't opposites. They're entangled. Love and soul. Want and will. Together, they make meaning. In myth, gods don't usually change. Mortals are the ones who break, grow, suffer. But Eros changes because of her, the god of love who spent eons toying with hearts like a bored kid with a magnifying glass, gets caught in the flame himself, and he becomes better for it. Less smug, more human. You might be wondering why this story appears so late in the Greek myth timeline. That's because it's not really Greek, not entirely. It comes from The Golden Ass, a Roman novel written by Apuleius in the 2nd century CE. So yes, it's late. It's also Latin, and wildly weird. The novel as a whole is about a man turned into a donkey by bad magic and bad choices. But inside that shaggy satire, Apuleius tucks this jewel of a story. Why? Maybe he wanted to remind his readers that under all the absurdity, love still matters. Soul still matters. That behind every transformation, there might be something sacred. Modern psychologists have made this story their own. Carl Jung saw in it a journey of individuation, the integration of conscious and unconscious selves. Feminist theorists point to psyche's agency, her refusal to be defined by gods, sisters, or fate. Artists from Raphael to Bouguereau to contemporary poets have painted, sculpted, and sung her story into every medium imaginable. But the real reason we remember it? Because it's us. It's the terror of trusting what we can't see. The moment we light the lamp only to lose what we love. The humiliating, exhausting work of making ourselves worthy. The temptation to open the box, the collapse, the kiss, the rise. You've lived this myth, maybe you're living it now. And if you are, keep going. You'll make it back from the underworld. You'll earn your wings. Because love isn't soft. It's a gauntlet. And the soul, when it's ready, doesn't just survive it, it shines. You smell the forge before you see it. Sulfur and smoke, metal and sweat. Down here, beneath Mount Etna or Olympus or some molten smudged cliffside, the god of fire limps through sparks and shadow. Hephaestus, the ugly one, the outcast. The divine blacksmith who builds Olympus from the bottom up, hammering thunderbolts, thrones, and revenge into gleaming form. His story starts with a fall, quite literally. Some say Hera gave birth to him alone, parthenogenetically, to spite Zeus. But when she saw the baby's twisted leg, she threw him off Mount Olympus. Harsh, right? Then again, Hera's not exactly known for cuddles. Other versions flip the script. It's Zeus who tosses Hephaestus after he sides with Hera in an argument. Either way, you're tumbling through the sky beside him for an entire day. When he lands, it's not softly. He crashes into the sea. Some kindly sea nymphs, Thetis and Eurynome, scoop him up and raise him in secret. He grows up crafting marvels. Living chairs, intricate jewelry, automatons of gold and silver. He forges beauty out of bitterness, turns pain into power. Sound familiar? Eventually he returns to Olympus, not with rage, but with a gift. A beautiful throne for Hera. She sits. She gets stuck. It's a trap. Only Hephaestus can release her. The gods beg. He refuses. So they get him drunk and drag him back up the mountain. Welcome home, buddy. Hephaestus is rewarded, if you can call it that, with a wife, Aphrodite. Yes, that Aphrodite. The literal goddess of beauty. It's not a love match. She's unfaithful, often, most notably with Ares. There's a famous myth where Hephaestus catches them in the act and traps them in a golden net. The other gods come to laugh. It's awkward, like a divine episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm. And yet, he stays with her, builds her jewelry, tries in his own clumsy way to be what she wants. Maybe because he doesn't believe he can do better. Maybe because he still sees himself as broken. Hephaestus isn't flashy. He doesn't storm the sea like Poseidon or seduce the skies like Zeus. He works, he makes, he endures. In a pantheon of loudmouths and hotheads, he's the quiet one who actually builds the tools they all use to fight and rule. Historians still argue whether Hephaestus was originally a fire deity absorbed into Greek myth, or a late addition borrowed from Anatolian or Thracian traditions. Some even link him to ancient smith gods from the east, like the Hittite god Hasamili. Whoever he was, before by the time Homer writes him in, Hephaestus is central, a flawed but essential god. You find him again in the Iliad, limping through his forge to make Achilles' new shield. A masterpiece. Cosmic scenes etched in divine bronze, cities at war, lovers dancing, the whole world, in miniature. He doesn't fight in the war, but he shapes it. And unlike many gods, Hephaestus has a sense of humor. He cracks jokes, throws shade. And yet there's a loneliness about him, a quiet echo in his myths, a sense that even when he wins, he's never chosen. A quirky fringe detail? Some obscure stories claim that instead of fire, Hephaestus ruled volcanoes and that his forge wasn't just metaphorical, it was Mount Etna. When it rumbles, that's him hammering. When it explodes, that's the day he's angry. But mostly, he's patient. You stand beside him now. The forge glows, sparks jump, his eyes are tired but bright. You see the way he handles metal, not like it's a tool but like it's a story he's rewriting with every strike. Because Hephaestus teaches you this: you don't have to be beautiful. You don't have to be first. You don't have to be loved by everyone. You just have to build. If Hephaestus is the forge, then Hermes is the flash. He arrives before you hear him, fast, feather-footed, laughing at the wind, the god of travelers, thieves, merchants, liars, luck, and language, the guide of souls, the original multitasker. Born in a cave, by noon he invents the lyre, and by evening he's already stolen Apollo's cattle and gotten away with it, not through strength, but wit. Baby Hermes walks backward in the sand to disguise his tracks. When Apollo confronts him, Hermes plays dumb with such flair that even Zeus laughs. He's the god of boundary crossing, liminality, thresholds. If a line exists, Hermes finds a way to blur it. He slips between realms, Olympus, Earth, underworld, and between identities, trickster, messenger, magician, negotiator. There's something uncanny about him. He's everywhere and nowhere. You'll find him on border stones, on roadsides, in markets, on coinage. But his real domain? Movement, change, the in-between. He's not the most powerful god, not the most feared, but he's the one they all need. Need something transported, delivered, dealt with quietly? Hermes. He's the only god who can enter and leave the underworld without consequence. Psychopomp, they call him. Soul guide. It's easy to admire him, or envy him. He gets away with everything and still gets invited to dinner. But don't be fooled. Tricksters aren't careless. They're calculating. Hermes might be light-footed, but he walks a razor's edge. His charm masks danger. His smile often hides strategy. He's not bound by the same rules as the others because he writes the rules, or at least edits them when no one's looking. In that way, Hermes is the god of loopholes, of what-ifs, of plan Bs. He shows up when things go sideways and turns detours into destiny. If you've ever talked your way out of trouble, faked confidence, to land a job, found the right word at the exact right moment, that was Hermes. The Romans renamed him Mercury, and he flourished in their world too. More commerce, more roads, more speed. His staff, the caduceus with its twin snakes, gets mistaken for a medical symbol today. Fitting in a way. He doesn't heal bodies, but he moves them. And sometimes that's enough. Hermes is the god of the internet, of emails, of memes, of trade routes and airport terminals and late-night DMs. He's chaos with a courier bag. The kind of god who'd show up in a hoodie and sunglasses, grinning as he hands you a package that changes your life. If Hephaestus is the one who builds the tools, Hermes is the one who decides who gets them and what they do with them. And when everything else fails, when your prayers go unanswered, when logic and justice falter, it's Hermes you call. Because if anyone can cut through the red tape of Olympus, if anyone can sneak behind fate's back and slip you a second chance, it's him. If Hermes is the loophole, then Dionysus is the rupture. He doesn't ask for the door to be opened. He tears it off the hinges. The god of wine, ecstasy, theater, madness, transformation. The only Olympian born from death, twice born, stitched into Zeus's thigh after his mortal mother was destroyed by lightning. Dionysus, his contradiction embodied, joy and grief, passion and terror. He is the vine that nourishes and the intoxication that undoes, the revel and the ruin. Worship him and you might be blessed. Resist him and you will be broken. He arrives with a procession, satyrs, maenads, wild animals, drums. There's always music, always movement, always the feeling that reality is loosening at the seams. His rituals were never polite. They were ecstatic, frenzied. People danced until they collapsed, tore animals limb from limb with their bare hands, lost themselves, found something else. That's what Dionysus offers. Not a better version of yourself, but freedom from the self altogether. He is the god who says, Stop pretending. Take off the mask. Or put on 100 more. Doesn't matter. As long as you know you're playing. He doesn't demand reverence, he demands release. And if you won't give it willingly, he'll pry it out of you. Pentheus tried to resist him, mocked him, banned his worship. And what happened? Dionysus drove him mad, lured him into the mountains, and let him be torn apart by his own mother. It's not a morality tale. It's a warning. Deny the wild within you and it will devour you. Dionysus doesn't just bring wine. He is wine. He's in the cup, in the pour, in the tipping point where celebration becomes chaos. He's the thin line between genius and madness, between art and delirium. The ancient Greeks knew this, made him the god of theater, not Apollo, with his control and clarity, but Dionysus, whose stories end in transformation or tragedy or both, because drama is born from tension, from rupture, from breaking something, to see what bleeds out. He is the god of masks and of what lies beneath them. The performer who loses himself in the role, the addict chasing oblivion, the prophet speaking truths no one wants to hear. But he's also joy, real joy, the kind that leaves you breathless and weeping and cleansed. Catharsis. He's the reason people dance when they should cry, the reason music sometimes feels like truth, the reason we drink, not to forget, but to remember something too large, to hold sober. In him, we are both animal and God, both shattered and whole. He reminds us that to be human is to be many things at once, and that's okay. He doesn't promise safety. He promises revelation, and sometimes that's what we need. You feel it before you hear it, the strange tug in your chest, the prickle of hair on your arms, the sharp thrill of goose flesh crawling up your neck. That's how it starts when Pan walks by. Or maybe not walks. Maybe he bounds, maybe he melts into the trees, maybe he doesn't move at all, and yet the world shifts slightly, unpredictably, around him. Pan doesn't enter a scene. He disrupts. He's older than most Olympians, wilder, hairier, the god of shepherds, flocks, rustic music, and raw, primal fear. That's right, the word panic is named for him. Not a coincidence. You stand among pine needles and moss deep in some sun-dappled glade, and Pan is everywhere and nowhere at once. He doesn't rule from a throne on Olympus. He prefers the mountain slopes, the shady groves, the undisturbed places of the world where logic fizzles out and instinct takes over. He's not the god of civilization. He's the god of everything that lives in spite of it. He's got the legs of a goat, the face of a man, and the eyes of something that never fully learned how to blink. His laugh sounds like a flute made of animal bones. His breath smells like time and sweat and old earth. His heartbeat matches the rhythm of hooves galloping on hillsides. He plays the panpipes. You know, the reed flute thing? Yeah, that's his. And according to myth, it was born from loss. A nymph named Syrinx fled his advances and turned herself into a bundle of reeds. Heartbroken, he cut them and bound them together. So every time he plays, you're hearing grief turned into beauty, unrequited love transformed into sound. That's the thing about Pan. He doesn't overcome heartbreak. He becomes it, and the sound of those pipes, it's haunting. Not like a pop hook, more like a half-remembered melody from a dream you're not sure you wanted. It awakens something old in you, something prehistoric, something barefoot and unbrushed and howling. You want to dance, you want to run, you want to scream into the wind and kiss a stranger and roll down a hill until your skin is stained green. That's Pan. But be careful, because he's not just a gentle nature spirit who likes flutes and goats. He's chaos wrapped in ivy. Sometimes he inspires euphoria. Other times, sheer, unshakable terror. There are stories of armies who heard his unseen voice on the wind and fled without a single weapon raised. No arrows, no spears, just fear, nameless, inexplicable, and overwhelming. A mass hysteria that felt like divine judgment, but was really just Pan, being Pan. Fringe fact. Some scholars argue that Pan is one of the only Greek gods who dies. There's a curious ancient tale, told by Plutarch, where a sailor hears a voice crying out over the sea, "Great Pan is dead." It was taken as an omen, the death of the old ways, the fading of the wild gods as the modern world took hold. Or maybe, just maybe, he was never dead, just sleeping, watching, waiting for the next quiet moment when the modern world lets its guard down and the woods reclaim your imagination. And historians still argue whether Pan was ever truly part of the official Olympian pantheon or more of a peripheral folk god whose cult grew independently. He wasn't glamorous, he wasn't orderly. He didn't marry or scheme or throw lightning bolts. But people loved him anyway, or feared him, often both. He's what you hear in the rustling, leaves that sound too much like whispers. He's the glint in an animal's eye when it stops to stare a second too long. He's the warmth of sunlight through trees and the sudden shiver when a cloud passes over. He's the reason that even now, even in a world of GPS and high-speed rail and houseplants with Instagram accounts, you still want to run barefoot sometimes. Still feel something stir when you stand in the woods too long. Still look over your shoulder when no one's there. Because Pan might be. If Pan is the raw pulse of untamed nature, then Hestia is the quiet breath that steadies you afterward. She's not loud. She's not flashy. She doesn't start wars, seduce mortals, or throw thunderbolts from mountaintops. You could walk right past her and not even know you were in the presence of a goddess. But she's there, always, and always watching. Hestia is the goddess of the hearth, the literal fire at the center of the home. She's the warmth in the middle of winter, the crackle of logs, the comfort of soup in a clay bowl. She's the unseen architecture of peace. And in ancient Greece, that meant everything. Every house had a hearth. Every hearth had a fire. And every fire was sacred to her. Before you ate a meal, you'd make an offering to Hestia. When a new city was founded, the flame from Hestia's altar would be carried to light the new city's fire. She was the first, and the last, literally. Every sacrifice began and ended with her. There's power in consistency. There's divinity in being dependable. Unlike most Olympians, Hestia doesn't have a soap opera of myths swirling around her. She's not out seducing mortals or shape-shifting into birds or turning people into trees. She doesn't throw jealous tantrums or go on bloody revenge quests. And maybe that's why people forget her. She's stable, which, when you're dealing with a pantheon full of drama magnets, makes her a bit of an outlier. But don't mistake quiet for weak. Hestia was offered a seat among the 12 Olympians. She gave it up voluntarily to Dionysus, depending on the version, so that there wouldn't be a divine conflict. Let that sink in. In a pantheon where even minor slights escalate into decades-long grudges and epic battles, Hestia bowed out gracefully to keep the peace. She chose humility over glory. You try that in a family of egomaniacs and see how long you last. And it worked. The Greeks didn't just respect Hestia, they trusted her. In a world of fickle gods, she was reliable. In temples and homes alike, her flame was kept burning constantly. If it went out, that was a bad omen. Real bad. You'd perform rituals to relight it, because without Hestia things fall apart. Society, literally, loses its center. Even in mythology, she's almost meta, a divine placeholder that represents the unspoken, the essential, the thing you didn't realize was keeping everything together until it's gone. She's also a virgin, goddess. Not in the chaste, prudish way modern minds might assume, but in the Greek sense, independent, autonomous, no partner, no consort, no distractions. Like Artemis and Athena, she charts her own path. But unlike them, she doesn't wield weapons or strategy or wilderness. She wields presence. You could call her the goddess of staying. Where Hermes sprints, Hestia sits. Where Ares charges, she waits. Where Zeus commands, she listens. She is the goddess of holding the line, of keeping the lights on, of not letting the fire die out when everyone else forgets to feed it. So no, she doesn't have temples full of gold. She doesn't appear in Hollywood movies. She doesn't have cult statues 20 feet tall. But you feel her. You need her. Every time someone lights a candle and sighs in relief. Every time a family gathers around a dinner table and something sacred stirs. Every time a refugee carries a tiny flame across a dark landscape, believing it will one day ignite. A home again. That's Hestia. She's not the flashiest goddess, just the one who never leaves you. You stand in the warm dust of Thebes, where every whisper of wind feels thick with foreboding. The sun hangs low, casting long shadows, and even the birds seem hesitant to sing. You already know this won't end well. Greek tragedies rarely do. But you press forward anyway, drawn toward a story so steeped in doom that even the gods turn their eyes. Oedipus is just a baby when his fate is sealed. His parents, Laius and Jocasta, rule Thebes with more fear than wisdom. And when the oracle at Delphi tells them their child is destined to kill his father and marry his mother, they panic. You feel the chill of their dread settle in your bones. As Laius takes drastic action, the infant Oedipus is bound by the ankles. His name literally means swollen foot, and handed off to a servant tasked with exposing him on a mountainside. But the servant can't do it. Instead, he hands the baby over to a shepherd, who in turn brings him to the king and queen of Corinth. Cue the ancient version of a surprise adoption. Growing up, Oedipus believes he's Corinthian royalty. He's bright, bold, and probably really into riddles even as a teen. But when someone drunkenly mutters at a banquet that he might not be who he thinks he is, Oedipus seeks the truth. And where else would you go in ancient Greece for existential horror? That's right, Delphi. The oracle, cryptic as ever, doesn't answer the question he actually asks. Instead, she drops the prophecy bomb again. You'll kill your father and marry your mother. So what does Oedipus do? He runs, not home, but away from Corinth, trying to outpace fate like it's a parking ticket. Historians still argue whether he ever fully believed the prophecy or simply feared it too much to risk it. Either way, it doesn't matter. You and I know how these things go. At a crossroads, literally because Greek mythology loves a good symbolic intersection, Oedipus meets an older man in a chariot. Tempers flare, egos clash, and someone dies. Spoiler, it's Laius, his biological father. Oops, first half of the prophecy? Checked off. Blood still drying on the stones. You shake your head. He doesn't know. Not yet. Later, Thebes is in chaos. A monstrous sphinx has parked herself at the city gates, devouring anyone who can't solve her riddle. Oedipus arrives and faces the creature. She asks, "What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening?" You probably already know the answer. So does Oedipus. Man, he says confidently. Baby, adult, elder, crawling, walking, cane. It's an answer full of symbolism and awareness that he himself tragically lacks. The Sphinx throws herself off a cliff, because riddles are sacred and rules are rules. And the grateful people of Thebes welcome Oedipus as their hero, their savior. They give him the throne and, well, the queen, Jocasta. And that, folks, is the prophecy's second punchline. You want to scream. You want someone to stop it. But the story doesn't listen. It's too old, too heavy with inevitability. Years pass. Oedipus and Jocasta have children, plural. Thebes prospers, until a plague rolls in, choking the city with sickness. The people beg Oedipus for help, and he does what he does best. Investigates. You watch with a growing knot in your stomach as he unravels the mystery of who killed Laius, not realizing he's hunting himself. It's a slow, excruciating spiral. A messenger from Corinth arrives telling Oedipus his father is dead and, by the way, he was adopted. That same servant who took baby Oedipus away all those years ago? Yeah, he's still alive. And when pressed, he tells the truth. Every last detail. The world tilts. Jocasta runs. You follow her, sensing where she's going. Heart thudding. She disappears into the palace and takes her own life. By the time Oedipus bursts in, it's too late. And what does he do? He finds her body. And in a moment that freezes time itself, he grabs the brooches from her dress, those lovely little pins that once held royal dignity, and plunges them into his eyes. Blood pours, vision fades, and fate, cruel and cold, is fulfilled. He doesn't want to see anymore. Not the truth, not the horror, not anything. You stand silently as he stumbles through the city, blind and broken. The people who once adored him now recoil. His children, Antigone, Ismene, Eteocles, and Polynices, are left to carry the weight of a cursed legacy. The house of Cadmus, their bloodline, seems forever stained. Some say the gods were cruel, that Oedipus never had a chance. Others argue his pride, his refusal to listen, his insistence on the truth, led him here. A classic case of hubris, maybe. A warning to all who dare challenge the gods, or perhaps to those who dig too deep. And here's the fringe tidbit. Ancient versions of the story differ on how Jocasta reacts. In some, she kills herself. In others, she lives, broken and withdrawn. The Greeks weren't always unanimous on her fate, only his. Eventually, Oedipus is exiled. He wanders, led by his daughter Antigone, until they reach Colonus. There, in a grove sacred to the Furies, those goddesses of vengeance, he finds peace, or at least something like it. The earth opens and swallows him gently, as though even fate feels guilty. You stand alone now, amid rustling leaves and ancient dust. No trumpets, no glory, Just silence, and a deep, aching tragedy that somehow still echoes. Centuries later, you turn from the wreckage of Thebes, the dust of Oedipus still clinging to your clothes, and follow the thread forward, because his children are still here, still marked by his fate. The house of Cadmus isn't done bleeding yet. Antigone is the one who steps forward first. She's got the kind of quiet fury that doesn't flare up. It simmers, loyal to a fault. And if there's a single bright thread in this entire mythos, it's her. She guides her blinded father through exile, walking beside him with dignity, until the moment he vanishes from the world. No grave, no tomb, just an old man swallowed by sacred earth, leaving behind a girl carrying both his shame and his strength. But tragedy, like gravity, keeps pulling. Back in Thebes, Antigone's brothers, Eteocles and Polynices, are doing what brothers in myth do best, trying to kill each other for a throne. After Oedipus's fall, they agree to rule in turns. 1 year Eteocles, the next Polynices. Sounds reasonable, right? Spoiler, it lasts exactly 1 round. Eteocles refuses to step down. Polynices, furious and betrayed, raises an army from Argos and marches on his own city. This is the War of the Seven against Thebes, a title that sounds heroic until you realize it's just more death, more dust. You watch from the city walls as chaos erupts. Swords clash, shields shatter, and in the center of it all the 2 brothers face each other, bone of the same bone, raised under the same curse, and kill one another in a final, brutal duel. It's horrifying and inevitable. You don't even flinch this time. When the smoke clears, Creon, Jocasta's brother, steps into power. You probably remember him. He's not evil, just inflexible, the kind of guy who thinks law is order and order is everything. So when he decrees that Eteocles, the defender of Thebes, gets a full burial, while Polynices, the traitor, is to be left unburied to rot under the sun, that's it. That's the match. Antigone can't let it go. She believes in the gods' laws over man's, in honor over decree. She buries her brother, not once but twice, and when she's caught she doesn't flinch, doesn't apologize, just stands there, radiant with defiance. Creon is furious. He locks her away in a tomb to die slowly, thinking he's upholding justice. But the gods don't agree. Tiresias, the blind prophet who seems to survive every generation of this cursed family, warns him, "You've gone too far." The gods don't like when mortals try to rewrite divine law. Creon wavers, finally cracks, but it's too late. By the time he opens the tomb, Antigone has hanged herself, and then the final gut punches fall like thunder. Haemon, Creon's son, Antigone's fiancé, kills himself at her side. Eurydice, Creon's wife, takes her life in grief. You're left staring at a ruined man, Creon alone in his palace, having destroyed everything he thought he was trying to protect. It's almost too much. But Greek tragedy doesn't care if you're tired. It just keeps going. You start to realize that these stories weren't just about fate and the gods. They were cautionary tales about pride, silence, rage, and the consequences of refusing to listen. You think of Oedipus clawing out his eyes, Jocasta crumpled in her room, Antigone wrapped in a funeral shroud of her own making, and somewhere behind it all the gods remain silent, watching, distant. You don't get a clean ending, just echoes. Bloodlines don't end, they unravel. And in Thebes, the ruins don't get rebuilt. They just sink deeper into the soil. And yet, something lingers. Antigone's defiance, Oedipus's quest for truth. Even in ruin, there's a strange nobility, like maybe the point was never to escape fate, but to face it fully even when it breaks you. You take one last look around the shadowed halls of Thebes. Then you turn your back on it, let it fade into myth, where it belongs. Thebes disappears. Behind you, like a bad dream you've finally shaken off. But you're not done walking the long road of Greek tragedy. You head west now, across the dry plains, over the mountains, toward the scent of the sea. You feel it before you see it. Salt and prophecy and fire. You're heading to Argos. Argos doesn't wear its trauma on the surface like Thebes does. It's older, quieter, a city that knows its sins and doesn't talk about them in public. But the house of Atreus? That's a blood-soaked manuscript. Chapter after chapter of betrayal and revenge written in flesh. You step into the myth through Tantalus, the original cursed ancestor. He was a king, favored by the gods, dined with them, laughed with them. And then, because hubris is the most Greek of all poisons, He tried to test their omniscience by chopping up his own son, Pelops, and serving him as a divine meal. The gods? Not amused. They noticed immediately. Only Demeter, distracted by grief, over Persephone took a bite. They restored Pelops' ivory shoulder and all, and Tantalus was cast down to Tartarus. You can still see him if you squint, standing in a pool of water he can't drink, with fruit hanging above his head just out of reach. An eternal hunger, a thirst that mocks. That's where we get the word tantalize. But Pelops lives. That's the thing about Greek myth. No matter how horrific the origin, life claws its way forward. Pelops becomes king, wins a bride, after sabotaging her father's chariot race with a betrayal that ends in a curse, obviously, and sires a dynasty. But the curse? Oh, it doesn't fade. It seeps down through the generations, picking them off one by one. Pelops' sons, Atreus and Thyestes, turn fratricide into an art. They fight over a throne, a woman, a golden lamb. Atreus wins. But Thyestes sleeps with Atreus' wife to try to claim the kingdom. So Atreus, he does what any cursed patriarch would do. Kills Thyestes' sons and serves them to him at a banquet. Yeah, this family's thing is cannibalism and vengeance. Not a great combo. Thyestes curses the house of Atreus, flees, and because the gods love irony, fathers another son, Aegisthus, with his own daughter. That son is raised to one day take revenge, and he will, but not yet. Now comes Agamemnon, Atreus' son, the king who leads the Greek armies to Troy. You know him. Proud, powerful, absolutely terrible at family dynamics. Before he can sail to war, the gods demand a sacrifice. He offers up his daughter, Iphigenia, like she's a pawn instead of a person. One windless sea, one bloody altar. That's the price for 10 years of glory. His wife, Clytemnestra, never forgets. She smiles, she waits, and when Agamemnon returns, bloodied, victorious, and dragging the prophetess Cassandra as his concubine, Clytemnestra greets him not with open arms but with a blade. She kills him in his bath. Cassandra, too. No hesitation, no mercy. And standing at her side, Aegisthus, the son of Thyestes. Vengeance complete. You think it's over, but you've been here long enough to know that Greek myths don't end. They echo. Agamemnon's son, Orestes, returns years later. He's grown, angry, and carrying a mandate from Apollo himself. Avenge. Your father, so he does. He kills his mother, and for that he's haunted. Not by mortal enemies, but by the Furies, the Erinyes, primordial goddesses of vengeance who stalk him night and day, driving him mad. They don't care about divine commands. They don't care about moral dilemmas. He shed kindred blood. That's all that matters. The only escape? Trial. Athena herself presides. And in one of the first courtrooms of myth, Orestes is acquitted. It's not clean. It's not triumphant. But it's a turning point. The old gods of vengeance step back. The new order of justice steps forward. Argos breathes out. For now, you walk through the ruins. Ghosts thick in the air. Everyone in this lineage has blood. On their hands, Tantalus, Pelops, Atreus, Agamemnon, Clytemnestra, Orestes. The sins change shape, but they never go away. They just shift from one generation to the next. You wonder what kind of myth we're writing now, and whether anyone ever really escapes the stories they inherit. You leave Argos with heavy steps, dragging behind you the iron weight of generations, who never learned how to break the cycle. But you're not done tracing the bloodline of tragedy. You follow the coast south and then east again, drawn like a tide toward a new city, a new myth, but the echo feels familiar. Welcome to Athens. It feels different here, cleaner somehow. The marble gleams. The columns reach for the sky like they believe in order, in balance, in something more than survival. Philosophy lives here. Democracy, drama, justice. Athens thinks it's above the chaos of Thebes and Argos. But tragedy doesn't care about self-image. It walks these streets too, and its name is Theseus. You've heard the polished version, the hero of Athens, the slayer of the Minotaur, the unifier of Attica, a symbol of logic over madness, civilization over wildness. But that's the statue. Scratch the surface and the story bleeds like all the rest. Start at the beginning. Theseus is born of two fathers, one mortal, King Aegeus, one divine, Poseidon. Duality already baked in. He grows up in secret, then journeys to Athens, taking the long road filled with monsters and criminals. dispatching them with the kind of justice that looks a lot like cruelty. When he arrives in the city, he finds it reeling from a debt owed to Crete. 7 young men and 7 young women sent every 9 years to be devoured by the Minotaur in the labyrinth. Theseus volunteers to be one of them. In Crete, he meets Ariadne, daughter of King Minos. She gives him the thread to survive the labyrinth, and he slays the beast, half man, half bull, born of lust and divine punishment. Victory, escape, heroism. But on the way home, Theseus abandons Ariadne on a lonely island. No reason, no warning. Just leaves her, like an old myth shedding its skin. Some say Dionysus finds her, marries her, immortalizes her in the stars. Others say she dies waiting. You can decide which version hurts more. Theseus sails on, but he forgets to change the sails from black to white, a signal he promised his father. And when Aegeus sees the black sails, he assumes his son is dead and throws himself into the sea. Another father, lost to a son's mistake. That sea still bears his name, the Aegean. Back in Athens, Theseus becomes king, but kingship doesn't cure the curse. His rule is complicated. He kidnaps women, including Helen, long before Troy. He joins Heracles on ill-advised quests. He descends into the underworld with his friend Pirithous to try and steal Persephone. That doesn't end well. He's trapped in Hades until Heracles hauls him out. Pirithous isn't so lucky. And then, his final years, full of political exile, betrayal, and isolation, the Athenians eventually turn on him. He dies far from the city he once saved, and, yet, Athens builds temples in his name, honors him as a founding father, turns his myth into marble. They smooth over the rough edges, as if stone can cleanse memory. You walk the theater of Dionysus, where playwrights like Sophocles, Euripides, and Aeschylus spun these stories into performance. This is where tragedy matured, became civic duty, where crowds gathered not just to mourn, but to understand, to hold up a mirror and ask, what are we capable of? What must we reckon with? It wasn't just entertainment. It was ritual, a communal exorcism. You sit where they once sat. Listen for the chorus. Hear the cries of Antigone, the madness of Ajax, the guilt of Orestes. All of them echo here, voices layered like sediment, layered like memory. Athens wanted to make sense of suffering. It almost succeeded. But even here, in this city of order and law, the myths end in blood and exile and silence. Theseus, Oedipus, Agamemnon, they all fall. Because in the end, no matter how you shape the narrative, how you polish the statues or perfect the verses, tragedy is human. It's built into the bones, and God's help us, we keep telling it because it's true. You step aboard a battered ship, the stars overhead flickering like forgotten gods. The sea smells like salt and stories. This is the Odyssey, and you're sailing beside Odysseus as the curtain falls on the age of heroes. One last journey, one last tale echoing through the mist. The war is over. Troy is ashes. The victors have scattered. But Odysseus, clever, cursed, unkillable, is far from home. 10 years of war weren't enough. Now 10 more years of monsters, gods, and heartbreak await. First comes the Cyclops, Polyphemus, whose single eye watches you from a dark cave. You help blind him with a burning log and flee under sheep bellies. Poseidon's fury follows like a shadow. Next are the Laestrygonians, giants who crush ships like toys. Then Circe, who turns your crew to pigs but also offers wisdom. You journey to the underworld where ghosts swarm and a dead prophet murmurs your path. Tiresias gives warnings. Your mother gives you tears. You pass the sirens, their song like honey in your ears. You tie yourself to the mast and let the music slice through you. Then Scylla and Charybdis, monsters on either side, and you lose men, again, always again. The cattle of the sun tempt your starving crew. They feast, Zeus punishes, all are lost except you. Calypso keeps you for years, loving, suffocating, but you long for home. The Phaeacians finally bring you back to Ithaca, where suitors devour your household. Disguised patient, you string your old bow and loose your revenge. Blood pools. Peace returns. Historians still argue whether the Odyssey is myth, memory, or metaphor. One fringe theory says it maps actual bronze, age geography, but maybe it just speaks to something older, your desire to go home even if home has changed. Now as the last oar dips beneath the waves, let the echoes of our journey settle into your bones. You've walked with gods and monsters, wandered, labyrinths sung to the dead and soared on the back of Pegasus. You've seen a golden apple launch 1,000 ships and felt a mother's grief freeze the seasons. You've stood in palaces and caves, temples and battlefields, and in every moment you were part of the myth. And through it all, one quiet truth has pulsed beneath the thunder and glory. These stories were never just about gods or heroes. They were always about you. About your longing and rage, your laughter, your flaws, your hunger for meaning. Greek mythology doesn't end, it just shifts shape. A marble statue becomes a meme. A lyre becomes a playlist. Olympus finds new echoes in skyscrapers and cinema. So now let your breath slow. Let the imagery melt gently. Sunset over Troy. The hush of Delphi. A flicker of torchlight in a sacred cave. The gods are quieter now. Their voices fade like waves on a shore, each one a little softer than the last. Your bed is your ship. Your dreams are your myths. And the world outside, still brimming with wonder if you tilt your head just so. Thanks for staying with me tonight. If you're still awake, you're stronger than Achilles. If